Welcome back to the Real Arsenal Deal podcast. This is Rav, your host, recording Thursday morning, about an hour and a half after the final whistle. What a crazy finish we've seen in the Merseyside derby. Everton scoring with a last moment equaliser to hold Liverpool 2-2. And look, the only reason I mention that, the only reason I really reference it actually, is because it is relevant. It's somewhat relevant in the Arsenal sphere. That was their long-awaited game in hand. They could have gone 9 points ahead of Arsenal. It's 7. Just trying to be somewhat positive still, because the big news is Kai Havertz out for the season. I was absolutely stunned when I read this. The ever-reliable David Ornstein, he tweeted that Kai Havertz is out for the season. This was different. This really hit me different, because the last update last week about Martinelli, it's of course everything's worded carefully. It's very considered wording that he in particular uses. He referenced for at least a month, which makes me worry a little bit, because that's probably going to sneak into 5-6 weeks. But for him to be just so matter of fact, Kai Havertz out for the season. This wasn't even something like Kai Havertz feared to be out for the season, or there were worries or serious concerns due to a significant injury, etc., etc. It wasn't any of that. It was just blunt. It was short. It was succinct. It was Kai Havertz out for the season. That I was just stunned. I saw that this morning first thing. I was literally numb. I didn't know what to do. And you know how you have that moment where, is this real? Is it April 1st? Is it April Fool's Day? Is it one of those parody accounts that, people create online? They just maybe misspell a word, Davide, put an E on the end of it, Davide Ornstein won something, by that blue tick that they do on Twitter or X, whatever it's called. I was going through that in my head. I was trying to find that hopium. And it's real. So it's legit. I wish I could tell. I wish I could say otherwise. I wish I could tell you otherwise. But clearly, if you're listening to this, you already know, and you're processing it in your way. And one of the ways I try and process it is by talking it through. So yesterday's podcast that I did when it was first reported that he'd suffered an injury scare, I tried to be a bit more. Considered, a bit more upbeat. Share a few maybe glimmers of hope and pathways. How can we come out of this and just try and mitigate the next few weeks until we can get Saka back, Martinelli back, Havertz back. The reality is now, and this is a hammer blow. This is a body blow, and we have been. It's just one of those seasons. We have been so damn unlucky. Like I said yesterday, we've had a lot of bad luck. It's just the truth. Some of the refereeing decisions, I mean, look, it was hilarious actually, me watching the game. I'll just come back to Liverpool-Everton for a moment. Towards the end of the match, just watching Jota given away, a foul's been given to Everton. Jota just boots the ball away behind the keeper, behind the byline, right in front of Michael Oliver. Textbook delaying the restart. Something, you left me no choice. Something by the letter of the law. The referee had to issue a card, blah, 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 and he does absolutely nothing and just wanders off. It's just hilarious, just watching that stuff. And what can you even say? It's so draining, the whole thing about officiating and how Arsenal are treated and how some of these decisions don't apply elsewhere. It was just bizarre. So anyway, look, the only reason I mentioned that is because we have been unlucky, right? We've also been unlucky with the cluster injuries. Saka, Martinelli, Jesus with an ACL. I mean, it's terrible luck. And whatever hopes we had when the January window closed, whatever hopes we had heavily relied upon was predicated on Martinelli, Trossard, Havertz staying fit, at least for this next run of matches until we can get some players back. It was essentially referenced by Mikel himself. I mean, I don't want to revisit these quotes too much, because it's looking like a bit of a reverse jinx at the moment. But he's referred to Kai as a genetic powerhouse, how he looks after his body. He's mentioned the need to look after our players, keep them fit, and get through this next patch. And the very next match was Newcastle. Martinelli's done a hamstring. Then we somehow managed to process that and cope and just say, look, get them to Dubai, get them rested up, get them recuperated, revitalized, come back fresh, hopefully with some new ideas, and try and get some more engagement out of Sterling and so on, and different tactics, different setups, and maybe we'll be okay. And then what was meant to be a training camp results in Kai Havertz, our main striker, our number one option. And say what you will about Havertz, and we all know the need to strengthen in that area of the pitch. That's not up for debate, and that probably doesn't serve us. That topic doesn't serve us right now, because say what you will, he is so crucial to Arsenal. He really is. He does everything that he's tasked to do. He throws himself into every challenge. He gives 100%. He spills his tank for the club. This really needs to be noted. For whatever shortfalls he has, and all players do, right? No one is the perfect footballer, just doesn't quite exist. One thing you cannot fault him is that he fronts up. He doesn't shy away. Every duel he gives himself. And that's really admirable. And I mentioned in yesterday's podcast, if you heard this part, is that I was really worried the last 20, 30 minutes of that Newcastle match when the game was done, and he only knows one way to play, right? He was throwing himself, sprinting around, charging around for every duel, still trying to just get something going for the club. Even though look, 4-0 on aggregate, it was done. And had we had the options available, we would protect him, take him off, put someone else on. I was wincing how long it took him to get up from each challenge. And look, there was a fair bit of spice in that match too. He took it very personally, and there was a fair bit going on between Arsenal and Newcastle, as there seems to be lately, right? There seems to be a sense of spiciness to all of our matches. Plenty left on in each tackle, and that's something I'm sure we'll address when they come to the Emirates later this season. But for right here, right now, he should not have been playing. He should have been off. But we literally had no one, right? We have a squad, we have a bench that's heavily weighted with left backs, right? And that's, again, all the other questions come into play. Squad building, lacking strengthening in the forward setup, not just in January, but for a number of successive windows. Unfortunately, it all comes back to bite. And it's come back to bite us. This really is an unacceptable position to be in. I try and keep things as considered and measured as possible here with sharing my thoughts, and you're not going to find someone ranting and raving and calling for the manager's head and resignations and calling for new ownership. That's not what you're going to find here. I try to be rational, but also, call it like it is. This is an unacceptable situation. We just should not be in this position. Saka injury was a week before, correct me if I'm wrong, please, a week before the new year. So we already knew that we needed to strengthen, because we needed to strengthen in the last few seasons. It shouldn't have come down to a last minute panic loan signing of Sterling. It just shouldn't have been. We've needed cover in that area of the pitch. Mikel has been crying out for that. He 2-3 years ago, he said that we need the firepower there. We tried to side Rafinha, right? And one by one, for a host of reasons, it just hasn't happened. A few podcasts ago, I spoke about the impact of Edu's departure, and not having that senior figure in the room to be able to navigate through key transactions and get deals over the dotted line, leveraging relationships between agents, other clubs. He would also obviously have an excellent relationship with our board, our owners, our lawyers, right? Our key advisors and representatives. So when a deal is looking close, he can swiftly coordinate key transactions to happen and happen quickly. And I talk about that I have a corporate banking background myself, and I talk from experience there. I'm not suggesting I was ever that high up. I was a senior manager working on some pretty sizable transactions with a team of people around me, and sometimes you need that one authoritative figure in the middle of it, coordinating, pulling all the strings, making sure we're all working, all parties are aligned, working towards the same goal. And from the outside looking in, Jason Ato, this is not to be critical of him, right? Because he seems highly rated and he's been Edu's understudy for some time. However, when we weren't able to land our key targets, trying to bring Šeško forward, right, who does seem like the key target for Arsenal, along with Ishak, who, again, I've shared my thoughts on that. I just think it's not possible given the price range and whatever tax Newcastle will put on because it's Arsenal. I just don't think that's realistic. So when it happened in the past that we couldn't land our number one target at the time, there's been a few examples. We went hard for Mudryk, of course. We pivoted beautifully and swiftly to Trossard. We went for Caicedo. We landed Jorginho. Early to that, I believe in the window prior, we really wanted Lisandro Martinez. And I think at the time, the lure of Ten Hag reuniting with him over at United at the time, that was too good to resist for him. So he signed for them, and fair enough. But we didn't rest on our laurels, right? We didn't just say, oh look, we tried, but we couldn't land our target, and we'll try again next window. We got Zinchenko, right? So the reason I'm citing these examples is that a well-oiled machine, a good operating system with a number of key executives aligned, planned, organized, ready to transact when the need comes, when you need to pull those levers, it shows up in these results. How quickly we're able to then swiftly and professionally pivot to the next target and finalize transactions. And when it was made evident that we couldn't land Šeško, and yes, there was a number of key forwards who moved around on the loan market and whatnot, and would they all have impacted or benefited Arsenal? There's some very valid question marks about them, and I'm not going to pretend that I know some of these players and their profiles and their histories and watch them every week and scouted them. I'm not going to pretend I know them that well to be able to definitively say that they would improve Arsenal right now. However, the point I'm trying to make is that we should have had leverage. We should have had other options in mind that when it became clear that Šeško wasn't possible, we should have moved and we should have closed elsewhere. Yes, Watkins emerged, and amazingly, I was surprised by this, and I've got no reason to doubt the news, given it originated from James McNicholas, Gunnerblog. I've got no reason to doubt this aspect. I was surprised that Villa approached Arsenal about that deal. However, it seemed that was at a time when it wasn't certain or wasn't known how advanced the Duran to Saudi Arabia talks were happening. So that pretty much killed off the possibility of us signing Watkins there. But the point I'm trying to make is that we should have had targets in mind. For those of you who remember the Amazon documentary a few seasons ago, I always go back to that image, Edu in his office, the whiteboard, that squad building. He had our number one senior players out on the pitch, and he had the other options in mind, the versatile options across the squad that can deputise and fill in those positions. And I'm just really, really scratching my head. What has happened? Why haven't we been able to find, and I know there's a segment of Arsenal fans who just want to sign anybody, and we are not at that stage. We don't just want anyone because we are so close now. The margins are so fine that we've got to get these signings right because they have to be in a very, very high caliber tier to be able to impact the squad, make a difference on the pitch, do all the tasks that Arteta assigns them to do at a competent level, join the press, have the defensive aspect to their game. I know the criteria is quite unique. However, we should have had those players in mind. There should certainly have been someone across the continent, across the league. I don't know. There should have been someone available, and maybe there was, and maybe we just didn't have the united front that we have once had internally between executive level, board level. Tim Lewis as the conduit between the ownership and Richard Garlick and his fellow board members, fellow executives at the club. Maybe we didn't have all that aligned. But I tell you what, I have not heard Arteta be as blatantly honest as he was. I have to call it like it is. The last few weeks, he was effectively calling out for a signing. Usually the rhetoric we receive from Arteta is very, very low-key. Even though deals are advancing in the background or a signing is close to be made, he doesn't talk about that. He references who we have and the need to get the best out of them, and he loves his players, and he handles that side very it's quite predictable. He's quite consistent in how he handles that. So when the language changed after the Jesus injury, and then you started hearing Declan Rice post-match interviews, he was referring to the need for us to sign someone. This is remarkable. This is really unusual. You've actually got players now wanting publicly, saying the squad needs refreshing. We need an addition, and it was really unusual. So the fact that they were calling for help, the managers calling for help, they needed support, and it didn't happen. And that's one thing, because when you look at it on paper, you can kind of rationalize, I say in inverted commas, you can kind of rationalize the pathway to the next month of football, given the congestion in the fixtures ease off. We're not playing every 3 days, which was ridiculous. We are hopefully going to have Saka back, right, in a month or so. You can kind of rationalize it, and the truth the truth will become known in the summer. Like if we land Šeško nice and early in the summer, and they refer back to this point, and a lot of the groundwork being done between him, Leipzig, his representatives, a lot of the groundwork's been done now to formalise a transaction in June. I can compartmentalise that part. I can look back and say, yep, okay, I get it now. It wasn't possible in January. We got him then, and that is what it is. However, we won't know that until we get there, right? But going back to my point, I can kind of rationalise what the club we're thinking. We've got Havertz, we've got Martinelli, we've got Trossard, we've got a brilliant, youthful, amazing footballer, Wanyeri, who can come in a number of key positions and impact us with goals, as he has been. And maybe we can get more out of Sterling. Maybe there's some young, some of the youngsters, Nathan Butler, Owediji. I finally got his name right. I've been embarrassed, stumbling over his name in previous podcasts. So my apologies for you having to listen to that. Carl Sago Jr. is floating around too. Maybe we can look to get 15, 20 minutes on a flank from the likes of Tierney, or just sort of revamp some options. I've heard Mikel Merino being floated as a target man false nine, and gee, that doesn't fill me with much confidence, but it's desperate times now. So there was a pathway, but going back to what I said at the start of this recording, that this heavily relied upon keeping our current players fit. And literally within a matter of days, we've lost Martinelli and we've lost Havertz. And it's a body blow. So what do we do now? It remains to be seen. It must be an absolute hammer blow inside the camp, inside the squad. Right, when it happened, it supposedly happened during a training drill, and I can't imagine it would have been great for Arteta, the staff, for Kai himself first and foremost, because he really gives his all, right? And he's been placed under a lot of pressure. He's played so many minutes, and it shouldn't be like this. He's carried a very heavy burden. There was an inevitability around this, right? And it would have been awful for his teammates. It would have been a real flattener for the entire squad travelling back to London now. Internally, they must have known the injury was bad, right? But you can only drip feed information publicly. So the fact that David Ornstein the very next day has tweeted that he's done for the season, it must be a shocker. It must be a terrible injury, possibly requiring surgical procedure like Saka's hamstring. And there are very valid questions to be raised about their soft tissue injuries for the club. The minutes played in the forwards. Not having that rotational option to relieve them, take some minutes off them. 3 of them have had significant hamstring injuries. Is this a coincidence or not? I don't know. There are valid questions. Just as there are valid questions when you look at the recurrent injuries we've had at fullback, right, from our left backs and Zinchenko, Calafiori, and Tierney over time, and Ben White, of course. There's question marks to be asked there as well. Is there something specifically correlated to the way we play, the way they're tasked to play? I don't know, but these questions linger, right? And do they help us right now? No, they don't. Are they going to help us get the 3 points against Leicester this Saturday? No, they're not. This is just the situation we find ourselves in, partly through horrendous luck, horrendous bad luck, and partly through negligence. We've exposed ourselves to this risk, and if we got through it okay, right, then we would have been lucky. and we could have got through, and we could have looked back on, and we all could have collectively, sighed a sense of, phew, we got through that okay. But we rolled the dice, and it's come back to bite us. Martinelli, and now Havertz done for the season. It's a absolute body blow. Our chances from here, whatever fine margins, whatever slim chance we had, even prior to this match against Everton, which I'll touch on in a moment, even prior to that, it's just dwindled even further. I don't want to be that guy that just starts talking about writing off the season, just trying to invest minutes now into the young guys and go again next season and have a big summer and unprecedented signings. I don't want to do that because we're still second. We're still second in the lead, 7 points behind Liverpool now. We've got some winnable games ahead of us. How are we going to win those games with basically one forward now, Trossard? That remains to be seen. But we're second. We have this little break off from Champions League. We return to action later in the month, right, with whoever we're drawn against. We're still in the Champions League as well. We have a wonderful defence. We do. It's very difficult to score against Arsenal. We have not been scored against at the Emirates in Europe this season. That's the bedrock of a strong European campaign. I really mean this. We are so difficult to score against. Wonderful defensive unit, a magnificent goalkeeper. We've got key midfielders, touch wood. Oh, God, I don't want to jinx anything else now. We've got key midfielders in good form. Partey's in good form. Jorginho, when you bring him in, especially in the continental matches, he puts on masterclasses. Declan Rice is almost in the best form of his Arsenal career in the last week or two, right? His running power, right? He bossed the City midfield, absolutely bossed them. So we've got areas of strength that we can draw upon, right? Does that mean that we're automatically going to start, putting 4 or 5 goals in team week after week with one striker? No, it doesn't. So it's going to be very cagey from here. What do we do? What setup do we do? I've heard wing backs being mentioned, 4-4-2. It's difficult because then you also look at our bench. We're gonna have very light forward options to come on and change a match if need be in the final 20, 30 minutes. It's just going to be really, really difficult. I still believe, I know you're probably scoffing at this, what's this guy rambling on about? How can you still be positive? And I kind of just have to be, because there must be a plan. I referenced it yesterday at length. There must have been a plan internally that the club had contingencies in mind in the event of what we've seen play out. What are we going to do? What have they been working on? What options do we have available? Can there be a bolt from the blue out of nowhere? Someone step up from youth ranks or so on. You just don't know. Sometimes through crisis creates opportunity. And we've seen how Wanyeri has grabbed his chance. You've seen how Lewis Skelly has. Is there anyone else? I'm not sure. I won't pretend to have that same level of optimism as I do, because Wanyeri and Lewis Skelly were incredibly highly rated, right? And it's no wonder that they've shown their quality, because it's been known for quite some time that these guys are going to have wonderful careers at Arsenal, and I'm so proud of them for taking their chances. Is there anyone else who can? I don't know. Can Sterling? Can we rouse something from Sterling in the next few months? I don't know. So we're placing a lot of emphasis on hope, a lot of variables outside of our control, and that where we only have ourselves to blame, really, because we've made the choices we have, and these are the natural consequences. And I'm trying not to be too downbeat, and I'm sorry that you're listening to this side of things. I'm usually a lot more positive and hopeful than I have been here. So look, I'll just finish this off with just some closing comments on the Liverpool-Everton result. I mean, the emotional roller coaster of a football fan, right? What this game does to us, what this club does to us following Arsenal, right? First thing in the morning, reading that Havertz news. And look, I wasn't even going to watch truth be told, I wasn't even going to watch the Everton match, because even though I knew it was on and it's been touted for some weeks, there's been a mini build-up to it, the last Merseyside derby at Goodison Park, or this Goodison Park anyway. Liverpool's game in hand. In my head, I just chalked it up to a win, right? Because they just find a way. They always do. I checked the score earlier and I saw Everton scored first. I'm still not going to put it on. I still didn't bother, right? I heard Liverpool scored, and then it was half-time, and And, I was just pottering around this morning, just getting myself sorted, getting my son sorted. And I thought, you know what, just have a passing glance. So I put the TV on, it's still 1-1 in the second half. And then out of nowhere, right, our internet, and I didn't even realize this at the time, but our internet provider had some scheduled maintenance, right? So the internet was offline for about 15, 20 minutes, which is bizarre, right? In 2025, but it was scheduled and it was planned, and I was on my hands and knees, like trying to fix the modem, trying to check the back of the TV, are all the cables connected? Has something come loose? This is a grown man on his hands and knees. Arsenal are not even playing, but I was so drawn in, I was so invested, even when I said I wouldn't. And it was hilarious in listening to my oldest son in the background, my 10-year-old. He said, "How many goals do you reckon Salah's scored now?" Right? He's just as sarcastic and cynical as his old man, right? Because I just knew that switching it back on, if I got it working again, that we're going to see Liverpool just steam ahead. And we turned it back on, and Liverpool are ahead, and Salah was a scorer. We just laughed, because you just have to laugh. Even the predictable nature of things, right? If you don't laugh, you cry. And it was just funny. It was a funny moment we had between us, because what this game does to us, the emotional roller coaster. And then Everton scored late. Of course, it was chalked offside. I was just waiting for it. The very, very last second, deep into injury time, a couple of minutes extra added because there was a head clash. And then Tarkowski scored a cracking finish. Goodison going nuts, players spilling onto the field. I sat there numb, because I just knew, how are they going to chalk this off? How many angles am I going to see? How many of those mythical lines are they going to draw, right, just to make him look offside? I was just waiting for it. You saw Michael Oliver just standing there like a statue, right, listening to his earpiece, just waiting for... And Kavanagh, of course, old mate Kavanagh, Mr. I have no choice, Kavanagh on the... as the VAR. I just thought it was written in the stars. They'll find some way to chalk this off, but they didn't. The goal stood, and it was just pandemonium. And how were the post-match scenes? That was just wild, right? You don't often see that. Players, it was madness, losing their cool. Some red cards. I believe a red card's dished out to Slot as well, which is very interesting subplot, because not having your manager on the sidelines, it does make an impact, right? We saw it happen a few seasons ago when they laughably banned Arteta for celebrating that last second Declan Rice winner against Luton Town, and you saw that had an impact on our next match when we lost to Villa. Like, these little margins, these things matter. So I don't know the final tally in terms of how many red cards were dished out, but Liverpool lost their rag at the end, and could that just be the start of a little wobble or something shaky for them? I don't know. Am I being so hopeful again? Is this just Rav, just talking waffle because he's trying to be positive again? It's quite possible. It's quite possible. These are the things that I try to cling on to as I process and find a pathway out of this in my mind, and I'm hoping the club is doing the same, because there's still so much to play for here, and what we do next, the choices that we make next, are really going to define how the season unfolds for us, right? The margins are so fine. We have to make considered, intentional choices, and somehow, some way, despite all the doom and gloom, despite the ridiculous position, the self-inflicted position we find ourselves in, here I am, still hopeful. Am I mad? I probably am. Please let me know what you think. Thank you again so much for listening. I think I'll end this there. I really appreciate the little trickles of feedback I'm getting. It is so, so greatly appreciated. Thank you all for listening, wherever you are in the world. I've got such kind, supportive comments, suggestions, encouragement. Thank you to a gentleman all the way over in Washington State who made me aware of some audio issues he was experiencing on his side. I've tried to correct them now. I hope this is much better for you. Please do let me know. If not, I will try to attend to that ASAP. For everyone else, wherever you are, thank you again so much. And I'll leave you just with my usual closing comments. Please feel free to like, subscribe, whatever platform you're listening to. Leave a review if you can. It means the world to me. Share any feedback. And also, most importantly, look after yourselves. Okay? Please look after, be mindful what you consume, be mindful what you engage in online. Be careful who's at the other end of the keyboard as well. What are they trying to? Are they trying to provoke a reaction from you, or troll you, or trying to suck away some energy for you, right? Please be very, very considered in what you do. Make good choices, wise choices. Invest in yourself. Look after yourself, okay? And look after each other. Thank you so much again for being here. I'll see you on the next one. I'll record in the lead up to the Leicester match. And I still believe, and I hope you do too. And let's get through this together somehow. Thank you again for listening, and come on, Arsenal.